All right, breaking news. National Guard deployed. Washington, D.C., they are reporting to the D.C. Armory in Washington, D.C., and it looks like hundreds of troops will be mobilized on the streets in Washington, D.C. starting today. Come on in, folks. Come on in. We are closely monitoring what is going on in Washington, D.C. The National Guard has been deployed. They announced it yesterday. We watched the press conference at the White House yesterday. The President of the United States standing with others, standing with the Department of Defense Secretary, standing with the FBI Director, standing with the DOJ, Pam Bondi, Attorney General, standing with other people affiliated with the Capitol Police. And the National Guard have been arriving all morning to D.C. There are some curfews that are going up, juvenile curfew zones in certain areas of D.C., hotbeds of crime. This will be interesting to see what happens here in the next few days at least, or at least into this weekend, as the National Guard has been mobilized, folks. President Trump announced the deployment of National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. to combat crime. It is the first such deployment since early 2021. You got a lot of reporters out there too, so we are monitoring situation, kind of seeing what's going on. I was thinking here, are they really going to be going down the streets armed? It's a possibility. I don't know. We're like literally, I think we're in a little bit of uncharted territory in this situation. But they are definitely out and about today. The National Guard out and about today. Now, a couple times, that the National Guard were in D.C. Last time, Capitol stuff, January 6th, Capitol. Another time during the June 2020 George Floyd nationwide protests, there were National Guard in D.C. Now we got this. Now we got a current deployment. They're saying up to 800. But they're saying 800 is going to be in there in D.C. by today. 800, but up to 1,000. 1,000. I'm seeing the numbers of 800. I'm seeing the numbers of 1,000 out there. Mayor Bowser, she spoke yesterday. She didn't necessarily, she's not acting like Karen Bass was in Los Angeles with, the deployment of the National Guard in LA. But she is saying that violent crime numbers are down, but she's not necessarily like against this in a sense. That's my take. Not like Karen Bass. Karen Bass is like, get out. There's no need. It's going to quell division and incite others by the National Guard getting in. Bowser handled the situation a little bit different yesterday at a press conference. But yeah, National Guard has been deployed officially, and they are arriving in D.C. today, this morning, all morning. And they're by the D.C. Armory. They've been marching up the streets. You see the media out there filming. And National Guard. We'll see what happens here. I think there's a possibility some protests this weekend, try to poke at them, maybe. I don't know. But they're there. They're there in Washington, D.C. There are so many reports. Remember that the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, she got mugged a few months back in D.C. DC news anchor revealed that she got attacked by a homeless man in D.C., Kira Phillips. So we got things, that, Stephen Miller, the White House chief of staff, he's been saying that the numbers, when they say the numbers are low, he's saying that's a lie. And he's saying that's a fraud and that's a manipulation. But the troops are coming out, man. The troops are coming out. Now, I think it's going to be probably a few days before we officially see people on the streets. But I do think possibly tomorrow. Today's Tuesday, right? I think in the next couple days, I think they're going to be out there pretty strong in force. My prediction, by Friday night. Because particularly down by the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C., the Navy Yard, there's a lot of youth and a lot of juveniles that run around and run amok. I think that will be, when they officially take the streets. Now, I don't think they have arrest powers. There's a lot of different reports out about what their duties are going to consist of. The National Guard out. So I'll continue to share what's going on. Stephen Miller from the White House, Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security, says the amount of unreported, unprosecuted, and unpunished crime is staggering, but everyone sees it, experiences it, and changes their daily routines because of it. It's why even the toothpaste is all locked behind glass at the stores. But we don't have to live this way, he says, and we won't anymore. And he's been tweeting out a lot today. Stephen Miller. But they're out there, the National Guard. But yeah, that we'll see in the next couple of days what exactly happens. I think what today is they're reporting to duty at the Armory. The National Guard is reporting to duty at the Armory today. And that's what's been going on all morning. It's the District of Columbia National Guard Joint Force Headquarters. The media is following these people around. Pretty wild. It's pretty wild. Trump declared yesterday an emergency. And he also said he's called it Liberation Day. Liberation Day in Washington, D.C. But as you saw just a couple minutes ago, they're down the street walking in groups. They're all decked out in camouflage in the Washington, D.C. area. I've been monitoring the different feeds. They got multiple different locations up this morning. Or it's now the afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. JLR Investigates. But you could see, they're out there. This will be interesting. We considered going up there and look, and we're going to monitor. But one good thing about D.C. is there's a lot of journalists out there, so I don't necessarily think it requires boots on the ground like we did in Eagle Pass with the National Guard and the takeover of Shelby Park. I think the situation is a little bit different here. But I don't know where, I don't know where they're going to be, during the course of, it looks like they're possibly there for at least a month. I got a memo. Let me get this memo that was circulating online. Permanent Orders 25-223, the District of Columbia National Guard, August 11th, 2025. Select members of the District of Columbia National Guard are hereby encamped pursuant to D.C. Code 49101 and voluntarily ordered to duty pursuant to 32 USC 502F2A until such time as subsequent orders modify or terminate this base encampment order. The purpose of this duty is to respond to short or no notice direction from the Secretary of Defense or the President of the United States to protect federal property and functions in the District of Columbia and to support federal and district law enforcement. So it's out there. The order is out there, but I don't. Some people are saying that duties do not include in arrest enforcement. Chris, creative. I live outside the DMV, and I hope he stops the dirt bikes, four-wheelers on city streets, not as citizens delivering food without license plates. Thank you, Chris, for the comment. Dirt bikes, roving gangs. Actually, they indicted a lot of youth between the 18 and 21 in the D.C. area just in the last year. They call them biker boys, and it's a roving group of juveniles that run around without license plates on dirt bikes throughout the nation's capital. It's pretty wild, but they were involved with all types of, crime and burglaries and robberies and things like that. Now, I think the consensus with all the viewers here in reference, now some people have mixed opinions about the homeless, right? What are you going to do about the homeless situation? Crime, I think everyone could support, the criminals being wiped off the streets, criminals being arrested, apprehended, stopped. But as far as the homeless, I think it's going to be a little dicey on how they do this. How they implement what they claim they're going to do with the homelessness in DC, particularly in the parks and by the monuments in certain areas. It's going to be interesting to see how they do that because there is a lot of homeless camps. Lafayette Park, they're just all over the place, these homeless camps. And these homeless camps, it seems like the breeding ground of these crimes. When people are in homeless camps for a lot of reasons, I'm not saying all the homeless are criminals at all. But the homeless, what are you going to do? Are they going to have the National Guard actually start storming in there and, ripping homeless camps apart? Or we'll put this other feed on, stand by. But yeah, that was kind of giving you a glimpse of what was going on. Now we're taking you at the Armory, where there's a lot of troops outside the Armory. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. They're there today. So this was not talk yesterday. Because a little bit of me was like, well, are they just saying this and they're not going to really do it? And they're just not going to have a lot of people out there? Is it just like a talk show? I think they're actually, here, this seems like they've been activated and they're out there. Now, what they do they roll around in, their vehicles? They rove around in groups of 10? Or they're going to walk around and perch up on corners? That remains to be seen about the situation. But they're out there, see? They're out there. But I think the situation's going to be, I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know. Stephen Miller puts out, and this is, the Trump administration's Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security. He puts out crime stats in big blue cities are fake. He says the real rate of crimes, chaos, and dysfunction are orders of magnitude higher. Everyone who lives in these areas know this. They program their entire lives around it. So he's saying the numbers when these politicians, and one thing we've noticed when we do cover like mass shootings or some sort of big events crime-wise in a city, and the politicians from these cities step to the microphone, one thing I notice is a lot of the talk that they say, they want everyone to know, but this happened, but overall crime has been down. And they put these numbers that crime has been down. Crime has been down. And I noticed that they hone in on that a lot. The Trump administration saying that when they say that, it's fake numbers. But my thing is, like, how many unreported crime? Like, what, like, how many things are going on that doesn't get reported? Or maybe the police don't even report things. Because I've seen some, like, really chaotic things in New York and everything like that with fights, and police just push the people away and let them go about their business as if it's not even reported. But what are the real numbers here? Now, are you in support of this? Is anyone in support of this? Not in support of this? Thank you, William Kaufman. Peace. Nice to see you, Peace. People don't protest gangs, but protest those there to help. Shows we got bigger issues. Thank you, Peace. Peace said people don't protest gangs, but protest those there to help. Shows that we have a lot of work to do in this country. I get it. Yeah, I get it. I mean, they were kind of saying the situation with, when they were protesting Alligator Alley, and, the governor of Florida actually told the reporters, you're out here covering about, these criminals, these violent criminals, saying they got rights and everything like that, and they need rights. And you're saying, how do you detain all these people? But you never go talk to the angel moms or the victims, families that got affected by people that committed crime. You never go and interview them. You never go and share their stories. You always want to share the criminal aspect and try to make it look like the criminal is the victim of the situation. If we had better neighborhood watches, we wouldn't need this. But we don't. So here we go. Maybe similar to like the guardian angels in communities. Back in the day, a lot of these cities and communities would have neighborhoods, like their own neighborhood watch, checkpoints and stuff, and neighborhoods and stuff like that. And the neighborhoods would take care of each other. The neighbors in each particular area would take care. I mean, to me, it's like crime just is. I think crime is crazy right now in this country, just on the overall scale. I don't believe when they say the numbers are down. I don't believe it. We see this every single day on this channel for years, the craziness that's going on. A lot of those reporters won't even be out there at night reporting what's really going on the streets, right? I think we're going to see some stuff in the next couple days, like what's really going on in D.C. Maybe, maybe not. So there are zones in Washington, D.C. now that they're implementing curfews starting now. An 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew is now in effect for juveniles in the Navy Yard area, the juvenile curfew zone. They got like a yellow curfew zone in particular areas. So police in Washington, D.C. have implemented a juvenile curfew zone in the neighborhood of the Navy Yard in the nation's capital, as Trump has placed the city's law enforcement under federal control, as well as the deployment of the National Guard in the area. The announcement comes in the aftermath of a shooting that took place over the weekend at the Navy Yard, where a juvenile male shot at other minors. Now they implemented this curfew zone. In a press release explaining the establishment of the curfew, the MPD wrote, "The Juvenile Curfew Emergency Amendment Act of 2025 gives the chief of the Metropolitan Police Department the authority to order a juvenile curfew zone in an area where large groups of youth are gathering or intend to gather in a manner that poses a risk of substantial harm to public safety. Those under the age of 18 are forbidden from gathering in a designated area with a group of 9 or more unless they are exempt from the curfew. A citywide curfew that begins at 11 p.m. and goes to 6 a.m. is also in effect until August 31st and has been in place for the summer. I didn't know about that. Did you all know about that? So apparently in D.C., right now as it is, they have a 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew for juveniles. It says curfew in general. I'm assuming it's not adults. I mean, that would be crazy if you had that, but that would show how bad it really is. Now, you know, growing up with me, most communities did have curfews, right? For juveniles. I know back in the day, driver's licenses, they would prohibit anyone under the age of 16, 18. Back in the day, you could get a license at 16. You can't drive at night as a juvenile. A lot of places have the curfews. This is where they're all reporting. No, this will be interesting. And we're going to follow it for the next couple of days to see what's up. And I am still kind of contemplating about possibly going up there. Just don't know yet. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting topic for sure about the National Guard being in Washington, D.C. Now, opponents to the situation, some Democrats are saying they're calling it Trump's D.C. police takeover a distraction from the Epstein files, tariffs, and tax bill. Chuck Schumer has called Trump's decision to federalize the D.C. police and deploy the National Guard to the city as an attempted distraction from other scandals. What do you think there? Is this a distraction? Distraction from what, though? Because you could still have all those types of things out there and talk about it while this is going on too, right? Bowser spoke yesterday. Now, will there be protest? Will there be protest out there this weekend? We don't know. We don't know what to expect here. And I do think, though, they're going to be here. They set a number into at least mid-September. At least into mid-September, they're going to be into Washington, D.C. But yeah, an ABC News anchor revealed that she was attacked by a homeless man in D.C. after the Trump administration ordered the National Guard to clean up the Capitol. Kira Phillips recounted the scary as hell incident where she was jumped near the ABC studios in D.C. by a half-dressed homeless man who mugged her. It was within the last 2 years that I was actually jumped walking just 2 blocks down from here. And then just this morning, one of my coworkers said her car was stolen a block away from the borough. Phillips said she fought back against the man who she said clearly wasn't in his right state of mind. Peace says this isn't about Republicans or Democrats. This is about America. This is about the future of our children. They emphasized yesterday at the press conference that, you know, a lot of children, a lot of school students come to Washington, D.C. to see the history. A lot of foreign dignitaries, a lot of foreign tourists, a lot of American tourists come to D.C. to check out its history, the parks, the museums, the monuments. And over the course of the years, what's been saying is it's one, thwarting travel to D.C. because people are like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to deal with this. And tourists and people are getting like mugged, harassed. It's dirty. And it's supposed to be rich in history here. It's supposed to have the architectural, the aspect of buildings, the national lawn, park, the monuments, the cherry blossoms. It's rich in history, and they want to just make the city beautiful, they're saying, so people would want to come there and not be scared and worried about being there in Washington, D.C. They're activating 800 members of the National Guard in hope of reducing crime. Even as city officials stress, crime is already falling in the nation's capital. The administration's actions are unprecedented, unnecessary, and unlawful, the district attorney of D.C. said. There is no crime emergency in the District of Columbia. Trump called it an emergency. The district attorney of D.C. is saying there's no emergency whatsoever. So there is some people like the D.C. Council, district attorney, that are like against this move of the National Guard being here. People are out there taking pictures of the guardsmen. They're out there. They're out there. We'll see what happens here over the next course of days. So make sure you sub up to the channel so we can like understand and see exactly what's going on. Kind of evaluate the situation. Yeah, but there's a lot of other things to report on this matter. You think this is do you support this? We should put a poll up. Thoughts? But it's happening, folks. It's happening. It's happening. Some people support it, some people don't. Listen, everyone can have an opinion in this matter. Some people might like some of it, what's going on, and others they don't. Share. This is a place where you can freely share how you really feel about the situation. We're just sharing what's going on. I give you my take. You don't have to agree with my take. Bill says this is the wrong way to go about this. Joseph says he supports it. More support than don't. Some people support it, some people don't. Did you all support the situation when we had that the issues in Los Angeles a couple months ago? Because that seems like it kind of went away. At the time where ICE was out there and Border Patrol was out there arresting people, and then protesters would come and confront, and then they would take it at the federal building, the federal detention center, and start defacing there, and then they mobilized the National Guard, kind of quelled it down, it seemed like. There was a lot of tension at first, but a couple of days it kind of quelled down. The Trump administration claims that if they weren't there and the National Guard wasn't there, the city would have burnt down. I think there's only a few hundred troops left there. We got a lot of media out there. Everyone wants to know what's going on. It's kind of giving you a glimpse. I guess they're all camped down in front of the armory. Probably stalk the armory and just see it for days and see exactly what's going on. This is called the Joint Force Headquarters in the District of Columbia, the National Guard, big building. Let me get the actual address. I'll get the address. Joint Force Headquarters. Is this Fort McNair? I think it's 1100 Ohio. I think. There's numerous. There's so many federal defense agency, the U.S. Air Force Honor Guard, the PSD Washington, the Joint Air Base Andrews. No, it doesn't look like it's it. We'll get an actual location. But this Daily Mail report comes out and says a mother's glad that they're there because they said her son was killed at McDonald's. So they're glad the National Guard is now there. So ask some of the victims of crime in Washington, D.C. Ask some victims of crime. Ask them how they feel about the situation. We all can have an opinion. We might support it. We might not. We're not necessarily victims. But do you think tourists would even want to go to D.C. if they got armed troops? Are they even going to be armed? They got troops walking around the streets and National Guard. Would you feel more safe, or would that be a deterrent to be like, I'm not going here. I don't want to walk around. You know what I mean? Like, would you want to go there with troops on all the court? Would you feel safer? Do you feel safe when you go to locations with a heavier police presence? Some people do, some people don't. Some people think it's a little intimidating with law enforcement standing around. There was one guy that went viral yesterday. He literally, I guess it was like some federal agency. He was up there shouting in the face of someone and threw a sandwich. He literally threw a sandwich at a federal law enforcement officer, and they chased him. It's a viral video that went out last night. I don't know when the incident took place. It probably took place last night. It's like, whoa. But we are definitely going to be watching in the next few days to see, you know, what's up and what's not. Like, are they going to just go down there and sweep and get the homeless camps away? Like, kind of similar to what, remember in Seattle, the Chaz? I don't know if you remember the Chaz in Seattle. It was like a autonomous zone that they set up in Seattle, and they had like blocks. It was like homeless people and homeless camps, and they wanted to create their own zone. And they put these barriers up and everything like that. Eventually, authorities just went in there and swooped in there and dismantled it. Now, is that kind of like what's going to happen here with some of the homeless camps? Like, are they gonna have the National Guard standing there with DC police, Capitol Police, and they're gonna go and start swooping through, dismantling the homeless camps in the parks? It's pretty bad in Baltimore too. Pretty bad in Baltimore. Now, it looks pretty quiet now. There's different feeds monitoring the building to see exactly who shows up and how many troops. They're saying 800 to 1,000. Which is a lot. 800 to 1,000 going to be in the area, and we'll see for sure where this goes. Especially at night, weekend nights. Peace says LA cleaned up for China coming here, but can't clean up for us Americans. Don't we matter? Didn't they do that in San Francisco too? Did y'all listen to the Bowser press conference yesterday? She spoke. There might be some protesters out there too. Photos. Protesters march against Trump's D.C. plans. It's like a group of protesters are out there too. Bowser says federalization of D.C. police won't change how we do business. It's coming from the mayor. Bowser briefly addressed reporters after her meeting at the DOJ. Bowser, the mayor, said that Trump's takeover of the police department will not change the city's police organizational chart and how we do business. She emphasized that the city wanted to ensure that they were using the new resources, noting that she focused on the federal surge and how to make the most of the additional officer support that we have. How we got here, or what we think about the circumstances right now, we have more police, and we want to make sure we're using them. Man protesting Trump's actions in D.C. says president is playing a game of division. A man protesting Trump's latest actions in D.C. said this morning that the president is playing a game of division. The whole idea that there is some kind of crisis or of disorder in D.C. is a made-up, phony story to distract attention from a deteriorating economy and from the ice rink. This is what one protester said outside the White House today. So we're also monitoring. Apparently, there might be some protests popping up. There was a little bit yesterday in the morning. But it didn't seem like the protests turned into any violence. You know, also Washington is like a beacon ground where a lot of people protest. And they let you protest in D.C. peacefully. I don't know how far they'll take it this time around. We are live in front of the Joint Force Headquarters, District of Columbia National Guard. And they definitely are out there a little quiet right now. Do you support the National Guard or not? Being there. That's the question of the day. I remember it was pretty crazy with at Eagle Pass at the time. Everyone thought there was going to be a big clash between Texas National Guard and Border Patrol at the time. That didn't end up happening. But man, tensions were high at that point when they took over Shelby Park, dealing with the border at the time. Secretary of the Army puts out a statement yesterday. Leland Blanchard. Or no, it's come from Dan Driscoll to General Blanchard. On August 11, 2025, the President of the United States directed the rapid mobilization of the District of Columbia's National Guard to support law enforcement organization. This mobilization will support restoring law and order in the District of Columbia as directed in the presidential memoranda dated August 11, 2025. Approval. I approve of the use of the DC National Guard to provide critical support to law enforcement efforts in the District of Columbia. This is coming from the Secretary of Army. Malin, nice to see you. Do you feel safe where you live in Florida? I do. I do. In Florida, well, I mean, you know, I don't live in a city, but I feel pretty safe in Florida. I'm pretty safe in Florida, though I won't go into Tampa, Florida at night in certain areas, but I feel pretty safe. But, you know, I'm a different breed because I wear media shirts all day long, and I don't think anyone wants to come up to someone and do something when they have big media on them, knowing that they'll be filmed. That's a great question, and thank you for the comment. Today is Homeless Abatement Day in Anchorage, Elizabeth says. Thank you for the comment. Christopher Arnett, make America safe again. I don't know if you guys listened to Bowser. Let me see if I can find the Bowser press conference from yesterday. I think she spoke briefly. See where she's at. I don't know how long she spoke. Well, we can kind of go there a little bit and come back here and see if there's any activity. I'm monitoring what's going on. It's pretty long, though. It's 40 minutes, though. I don't know if you guys saw it or not. But Bowser spoke about the issue. The mayor. think the mayor in the Trump administration is in agreement on some things, but others not. But I don't think she has a choice, though, either. Trump declared federal, and he has the authority to do it, apparently. Trump declared federal control of D.C. police and is deploying the National Guard. Here's how he's able to do it. Here's what they're saying. The Home Rule Act of 1973. And they say, President Trump said Monday he is placing Washington, D.C.'s police force under direct federal control and deploying National Guard troops to the nation's capital, citing a public safety emergency after an assault on a former government worker. Goes on to say, the move draws on a sweeping but temporary powers granted under the Home Rule Act of 1973, a law that balances local self-governance with federal oversight in the Capitol. While the president can assume control of the police department for up to 2 days, extending this authority would require congressional notice or a change to the law. Trump's announcement comes after the assault of a 19-year-old former Department of Government Efficiency worker during an attempted carjacking on August 3rd. How was Trump able to take over D.C.'s police? Washington, D.C. operates under the Home Rule Act of 1973, which grants Congress oversight and authority over the Capitol while allowing district residents limited self-governance. The act grants emergency powers to the federal government, allowing the president to take control of the city's police for up to 48 hours if he determines special conditions of an emergency nature exist, requiring the department's use for federal purposes. This marks the first time in the act's history that a president has assumed control of the city's police force. Extending the takeover for a longer period requires Trump to formally notify the chairs and ranking members of congressional committees handling D.C. affairs. Any control lasting more than 30 days would need congressional approval and must be passed into law. A highly improbable scenario given the current gridlock in a closely divided Congress. Washington Mayor Bowser and leaders of the Washington Metropolitan Police Department did not know about Trump's intentions ahead of his announcement. Bowser called the move unsettling and unprecedented during a news conference Monday, saying she believes Trump's view of D.C. was shaped by his COVID-era experience during his first term, when crime spiked. National Guard and FBI agents are already working with police. Trump also activated 800 soldiers from the D.C. National Guard, with up to 200 assigned to support law enforcement, according to the Department of Defense. Duties of those personnel include administrative and logistical roles, as well as providing a physical presence in support of law enforcement. So law enforcement does the arrest. They stand there and just show force, I guess, right? Stand there, but they can't really do arrest powers themselves. It's the way I'm reading it. Beyond the police department, Trump has broad jurisdiction over the city's affairs. Numerous federal law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, are headquartered in the city and report directly to the administration. Well, we could play Bowser. We have Bowser when she spoke. And then if anything breaks, like in reference, we got different cams out there in D.C. to kind of just see what's going on.
Today's announcement from the White House. So I'll have a short statement, and then we'll be able to take a few questions. So let me start by saying this. Washington, D.C. is a beautiful city, magnificent city. We're home to 700,000 Washingtonians. We welcome millions of visitors every year from around our nation and around the world. We have the nation's premier park system, fantastic public schools, including a free and robust pre-K program starting at age 3. We have a tremendous public transportation system, and we have hardworking people here who are raising families, starting businesses, and hiring workers. So it's very important to me that for all who live here and visit here, just know how beautiful our city is and how proud we are of all that we've accomplished here. We're unique in other ways as well. Though we pay taxes, in fact, we pay more than most states per capita. We're not a state. We don't control the DC National Guard. We don't have senators or full autonomy. Limited home rule gives the federal government the ability to intrude on our autonomy in many ways. I've said before, and I'll repeat, that I believe that the president's view of DC is shaped by his COVID-era experience during his first term. And it is true that those were more challenging times related to some issues. It is also true that we experienced a crime spike post-COVID, but we worked quickly to put laws in place and tactics that got violent offenders off our streets and gave our police officers more tools, which is why we have seen a huge decrease in crime because of those efforts. We have been able to reverse that 2023 crime spike. This year, crime isn't just down from 2023, it's also down from 2019, before the pandemic, and we're at a 30-year violent crime low. We're not satisfied. We haven't taken our foot off the gas, and we continue to look for ways to make our city safer. We know, however, as most have heard from the president's press conference, that he has prerogatives in D.C. unlike anywhere else in the country, including his authority given by our home rule charter to require the mayor, to require me to supply services of the Metropolitan Police Department. And he also has control and the ability to deploy the National Guard. But let me be clear, as our home rule charter is also clear, and the president's executive order restates. Chief Pamela Smith is the chief of the Metropolitan Police Department, and its 3,100 members work under her direction. The Home Rule Charter requires the mayor to provide the services of MPD during special conditions of an emergency, and we will follow the law. Though there's a question about the subjectivity of that declaration. In fact, the chief has already provided a high-level liaison and point of contact with the federal government and made those initial contacts. The executive order is also clear that the president has delegated his authority to make requests of us to Attorney General Pam Bondi. I have reached out to Attorney General Bondi and hope to schedule a meeting soon. My message to residents is this. We know that access to our democracy is tenuous. That is why you have heard me and many Washingtonians before me advocate for full statehood for the District of Columbia. We are American citizens. Our families go to war. We pay taxes and we uphold the responsibilities of citizenship. And while this action today is unsettling and unprecedented, I can't say that given some of the rhetoric of the past, that we're totally surprised. I can say to DC residents that we will continue to operate our government in a way that makes you proud. We will balance our budgets. We will deploy our services. Our kids are going to start school on August 25th. And we will work with the federal government to do the things that they should do for our city, including making sure that we have the judges that we need, including making sure that all federal parks are supported, not just with law enforcement, but with other clean and safe activities, and including making sure that our economy is supported by rational federal actions as it relates to the federal workforce, federal workers, and federal property in the District of Columbia. So with that, I want to ask Chief Smith to talk about her interactions with the federal forces, federal police and law enforcement that have been engaged in the district over the last several days, and the strategy that she thinks would be important while we have additional federal police officers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm Pamela Smith, the Chief of Police of the Metropolitan Police Department. And as the Mayor stated, you know, we have a responsibility to support the executive order. And one of the roles that I have is to ensure that we work very collaboratively with our federal partners. I know that most of us know in this room, and those of you that are watching on television, that the efforts of the federal law enforcement officers began in our city on Thursday night. I met with the director of the U.S. Marshal, who has been at that point overseeing the operational component of how the federal resources will be allocated and deployed around our city. With that conversation, it was very, very important for me to ensure that not only do we work collaboratively with our federal partners, but we offer up areas across our city where we can work with them in areas where we know that we want to reduce crime. So that was the effort on yesterday. We spent roughly about an hour just kind of planning and talking through what that's going to look like. On the heels of the announcement from the President today regarding the executive order and my directive from the mayor is that we will begin more intense planning efforts after I leave this press conference. I've also met with one of the other liaisons that have been assigned to work with the U.S. Marshal, along with myself, regarding the efforts around the city for how we will allocate resources. What I will say is this: our relationship with our federal partners is not new. We do this on a daily basis. We are very, very, very much in tune to having federal law enforcement officers working with us on our Capital Area Regional Task Force. Our federal partners work with us, especially on some of our warrant executions. They work very, very closely with us with our Violent Crime Suppression Division, and it is my intent and my police department's intent to continue those efforts. What you will see is an enhanced presence. The second thing that's really important to me, and I'm speaking directly to our community, is that we have a relationship with our community that is very important to us, our community members. And so having our Metropolitan Police Department working alongside of our federal partners who have come into the city to really help us assess and deal with the crime, that some of the crime spikes that we have, we will work alongside them, but intentionally, we want to make sure that our community understands that we are there. We're going to be boots on the ground. If you see something, again, say something. We value those relationships. Our community members, and I want to say thank you for all the work that you've done with the Metropolitan Police Department up to this point. Those relationships are very, very important to us, and we want to continue to build upon that and continue to enhance that. I'll turn it back over to Mayor Bowser now.
Okay, we'll take a few questions, and I'm joined by members of my public safety team, including Deputy Mayor Appiah and Chief John Donnelly. Yes, please identify yourself.
Mayor Bowser, Campbell Robinson, New York Times. Do you think this was inevitable, or do you think there are things that the city could have done as the council to prevent a mistake from happening?
This is, I don't know. I can't answer that question, and I think that's a question that you're familiar with the rhetoric about the city and how long it goes back. And we also know that we're not experiencing a spike in crime, but a decrease in crime. Yep.
Mayor Tom Sherwood, 10 News Radio. You and the chief are talking about partnerships with federal partners who are coming in. The president is talking about a takeover of the city's police department. Where does the chief fit in with Terry Cole, who's the new general commissioner of the DC Police Department?
Nothing about our organizational chart has changed, and nothing in the executive order would indicate otherwise. So the chief of police reports through the deputy mayor to the mayor of the District of Columbia, and the two people I think that were identified in the presser report to Attorney General Bondi. The executive order makes clear that all requests for MPD services, the president delegates to Attorney General Bondi. I don't recall the names. Yes.
The Metropolitan Police Department? Where does he fit in that?
That's a question for the Attorney General, I think. Yep.
Mayor, to what extent are you planning to cooperate in this new framework, or is the city planning anything to prevent this from happening, including a legal act?
Well, I think all legal, I think you probably saw the Attorney General for the district, Brian Schwab's a statement about reviewing all legal matters, and I think those matters are under review. The plain language, however, of the Home Rule Charter indicates that there is a declared emergency. It allows the president, it authorizes the president to make those requests. And it says the mayor shall comply with those requests. So, yeah.
Marielle with DC News Now. Are there any concerns that, with this rhetoric, and we have NPD, the National Guard, possible other law enforcement agencies on the ground, that there will be confusion about who's in charge, who these officers answer to, and how people should respond if approached by any of these enforcement?
Well, we should note, and we have been advised, and we will continue to make this clear that this is needed in our city, that all law enforcement be identifiable by a uniform, a badge, a jacket, so that people know that they are law enforcement. And the chief, in her coordination with the kind of the command on the federal side, will make clear kind of how the protocols for response. And if there's any additional information we need to get out to the public, we will. But the main point is this: everybody should follow the law, the police and the community. And that's the case now. It was the case last week, and it was the case the week before that. So nothing has changed about that. Yeah.
Lionel Donovan, WUSA. Would you be able to respond to the statement that came out from the DC Police Union? They come out saying that they stand with the president and that they have also said crime is spiraling out of control. And they're also calling for the president to go even further and repeal some of the legislation that DC Council passed.
I'm afraid I haven't seen that statement yet, so I don't want to comment on it. We have, worked very closely with the DC Police Union. Some issues they've advanced, I've totally agree with. Others I haven't. One thing that we are squarely supportive of is making sure that our department can recruit more officers and get to a number that I think we need. We've worked cooperatively with them on recruitment and retention activities, on some other changes to the law that were very objectionable to the union and our members, and we will continue to do that. Yeah.
Peace and blessings, Madam Mayor. So, in what way, if any, does this change your strategy in terms of your relationship with the president? You've been pretty cooperative, pretty diplomatic, but You know, he's saying one thing about crime, you're stating facts, and he's still infringing on your role as mayor. So, you know, as far as your relationship and your strategy, you know, what do you intend to do as far as, you know, engaging with the magistrate?
Well, we engage with all officials that impact the district, and that includes the president. So I don't expect that would change from our part.
But as far as, you know, and if I may follow up.
Sure.
You know, are you going to go what some might consider a bit harder and pushing back against what he's trying to do? You know, will your tenor change or intensify? You know,
my tenor will be appropriate for what I think is important for the district. And what's important for the district is that we can take care of our citizens. And if people are concerned about a president's ability to have the MPD police department be responsive to the Department of Justice, the time to address that is when we're talking about statehood for DC. If people are concerned about the president being able to move the National Guard into our city, the time to do that would have been when the Congress had a bill that it could have given control of the DC National Guard to DC. So there are things that when a city is not a state and not fully autonomous and doesn't have senators, that the federal government can do. Yeah.
Susan Garrett from the Boston Globe.
Yeah.
Just to follow on his question, you at times in President Trump's first term were more confrontational with him, especially in 2020. You've tried to be more cooperative this time. Any second thoughts about that approach? And are you planning any sort of defiance, symbolic or whatever, in light of this?
Well, I would refer you to the law. Humble Charter, he referred to it. I would refer you to the executive order. And so everything that we have said maintains my authority given by the Home Rule Charter. Yeah.
Josh Chapin, Channel 7. I just want to be clear also that this ramp up, this emergency we're talking about is a brief period, like a 30-day period, am I right?
The charter gives him the ability to do it for 30 days, yes.
So that means cooperating with the, you know, whatever he wants to do.
Well, it means that we follow the law, and that the MPD follows the law as well as all of the federal officials who are here. It's also important and we will do this in our communications with them, understand like what they're looking to see. So the fact that we have more law enforcement and presence in neighborhoods, that could not, that may be positive if people are, if it's a positive action. So that's what the executive order says. Yeah, Mark.
A couple quick questions. One, do you know, will the National Guard be armed?
I don't know.
And then, what if the Attorney General directs the Chief of Police to redirect sources to do something that you and the chief disagree with? For instance, redirect resources from east of the river to the federal enclave or something like that. Will you comply with, you say you're going to follow the law, you say you want to be cooperative. What if you get a directive from the White House or the Attorney General that you just steadfastly don't agree with and think it's the wrong move and would jeopardize public safety in other neighborhoods? Will you comply?
I don't have any reason to think that at this point, Mark, so I don't want to speculate about that. The executive order, as is the Home Rule Charter, is pretty clear that the directives have to be, the requests have to be related to federal purposes.
And then can I ask, the president threatened to use not just the National Guard, but military, to bring the United States military, federal troops into the District of Columbia if needed. Can you respond to that threat? I mean, we're in uncharted waters already. A lot of people are seeing this as the first step in an assault on home rule, which the president has threatened. He's been making these threats since last year, and now he's carrying through with them. There's no reason to believe he won't go further. What do you say to the president about his threats to bring the military, not just the National Guard, but the military into
We don't, and I think I speak for all Americans, we don't believe it's legal to use the American military against American citizens on American soil. I'm not a lawyer, and but I think that's a fairly widely held fact. And so, but we've seen them move, I think, active military into California. So it's a question. We've seen active military on the borders of D.C. some years ago, and we don't believe that our military should be used against American citizens. Yes?
Mayor Bowser, can you talk a little bit about the communication that you did receive before this morning? Did you know what this announcement was going to be before today? And can you just talk about the communication writ large before today? And secondarily, what do you say to D.C. residents who wanted to hear more from you, specifically in the last 5 days, being forthright, speaking to press and media? Can you just talk about...
D.C. residents know I'm forthright. That's not a question. D.C. residents know that, and this press corps should know I speak to you all the time. So you should know that as well. And your question was, when I did not know that the request of MPD would be made. I believed that they would announce that they were going to call up the National Guard. I had one brief phone call related to the National Guard issue over the weekend.
Mayor,
yes.
Can you
identify yourself?
Brian Todd from CNN.
Okay.
Can you tell us what your main challenges are going to be? Chief Smith and the D.C. Police working with federal officials, and are you concerned that any federal official overseeing the D.C. Police Department is not going to know the city as well as Chief Smith and your officers?
Chief Smith oversees the MPD. And all of the requests and coordination for the federal request. I don't really have a doubt that is going to, among those officials who are law enforcement officials who have experience working together, I don't have a big concern about that communication and coordination happening. Who hasn't yet?
Emma Huber with the Washington Post. During the news conference this morning, President Trump spoke about how he wanted to empower D.C. police to hit back harder. Are you aware of any changes in the works to MPD's use of force policies, and does that kind of rhetoric, how do you feel about that kind of rhetoric? Our
police officers are highly professional, well-trained officers that we support with training throughout their careers. We're proud of where our department has come from in terms of their level of professionalism. So they're trained in constitutional policing, and that is our expectation. Yes. Hold on, you asked the question. One.
Owen Hayes, NBC News, just to follow up on that a bit.
Yeah.
So will they still be fully subject to local regulations when it comes to use of force, body cameras while under federal control, MPD officers?
MPD reports reports to the chief of police, and they are subject to DC and local laws as well as federal laws.
And that will continue even under this plan?
Yes. Yes.
Emiliana with News Nation. You said earlier that they did not tell you about this announcement before it happened today. Did the White House or the president bring up their concerns with crime before last week?
The president talks about crime all the time.
Specifically in D.C.?
Yes. Have you not heard the president from the campaign trail? In every conversation I had with him, we're always briefing the president on our progress. In fact, my first meeting with him after he was elected the second time, we went over the crime trends. We went over how we're seeing decreases. So the president is read in on our efforts. Who has that? Yep, over here.
Ashraf Khalil with the Associated Press. A lot of this seems to be perceptions of what constitutes an emergency. The White House, the administration says there's an obvious emergency. Your administration with numbers, and the council says there is not an emergency here. How do you solve that? Is there an arbitration option? Where does it go from here? Because it feels like, do you agree that it comes down to what constitutes an emergency and what's that?
Well, what I would point you to is the Home Rule Charter that gives the president the ability to determine the conditions of an emergency. And we could contest that, but the authority is pretty broad. And so, like, if you wanted to say the most outrageous thing, one might say, well, I won't say that. It could be something very small. Like, I'm not saying that that's what he's doing, but it could be. And if he deems it and he puts the meat around it and the argument around what he thinks is an emergency. When we think of emergencies, it usually involves surges in crime, or crime that's not being responsive, or tools that we have that we can't use in the normal course. That's what, when we use an emergency, that's what it's for. Yeah.
Oren Oppenheim, ABC News National. Wanted to see if you could respond directly to some of what the president said this morning. Do you agree or have any thoughts on the picture he's painting? He said that there are, quote, bloodthirsty criminals, end quote, or roving mobs of wild youth. End quote. He also said that DC police can do whatever the hell they want, end quote. Are you okay with that? What does that mean? Do you have any response to him or the White House talking about the DC crime stats?
I mean, I think I've already addressed all of those questions. Anything else? Yeah.
Scott Gunn with WTOP. You described, this morning was described as a federal takeover of MPD. It sounds like you're describing this as Chief Smith is still in charge and everything will run through the department. What will this look like on a day-to-day basis as it relates to what has transpired here? What can people expect to see? Is this an instance where you all work collaboratively for big events and this is something comparable to that?
No, I don't, it's not like that. It's not like the special events task force where we work together. And I think I don't want to minimize what was said. And I don't want to minimize the intrusion on our autonomy because it is very different than working a special event. So that is not what we're trying to do. But I think the chief, and I'll turn to her in a second to talk to you about what she thinks is going to be most helpful to MPD.
I want to believe I answered the question a little bit earlier, but I think what's helpful to us is that we come together and we look at data, we look at intelligence when it comes to crime across our city, violent crimes as well as property crimes. And so there are other things that the federal government is also very useful for, useful in supporting us, and that is in the city is warrants, right? The execution of warrants, the U.S. Marshals holds those. This will be an opportunity for us to come together and collaborate on being able to go out and execute warrants. As we think about over the past, came in 2 years ago, 5 years prior, we looked at some of our data where we saw an increase in violent crime in certain areas across our city. We designated those areas as a homicide reduction partnership plan with some of our federal officers. What we'll do in that space is we'll enhance that presence. The other thing is that most of you know we have a nightlife task force. U Street, we have a lot of tourists, residents, individuals who come into our city on a Thursday night, Friday night, or Saturday night and enjoy the nightlife culture. We will also be able to utilize that enhanced presence in and around that area and any other crime trends that we might see that will go forward. We have our drug-free zones where we also align our federal partners in those spaces as well as our juvenile curfew zones.
May I just follow up quickly, Chief? So again, this morning it's being described as a federal takeover. You all are describing it as an opportunity to enhance the crime prevention strategies you have in place. To the community who's confused about the discrepancies, where does it fall?
Well, I just articulated to you where it falls. And what I mean by that is that with respect to the two federal partners who will be working alongside me, the operations and the administrative liaison, we have a meeting scheduled for today right after this meeting, and we will be able to create an operational plan for our city that will continue to keep our city safe.
Chief Smith, I just have one question.
You just broke the rule. Maybe somebody else haven't asked the question already. Okay, is that it? Okay. All right.
I just have one question, because you
Yes,
bring up data a lot. We've talked about the data's come from MPD saying that crime has been going down. However, this morning Trump did cite a report where a sergeant was accused of messing with the crime number. So would you be able to respond to some of what Trump said directly this morning?
Well, I cannot respond to any internal investigations, and I think, as you know, we do not talk about personnel actions with regards to our personnel. Sam.
A two-part question.
For me?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is in regards to you. What is your professional assessment of how FPD has handled the so-called youth takeovers? And I guess the second part of my question might be more appropriate to the mayor, but
Well, can I ask the first question, then you can ask the mayor the second question. I think when it comes to the juveniles, and I've said this, you know, I'm very passionate about young people who are going to do great things in our city, and we have a lot of young people who are moving in that trajectory and in that space. The problem is we have a small subset of young people who do not, and I've said to parents, you need to know where your children are. We've talked about this over and over again. The mayor has enacted an executive order so that I, as the chief, can designate juvenile curfew zones around our city so that we can still give young people the opportunity to be able to be in those spaces based on what the laws and the regulations state, but we won't allow the disruptive behavior, and we've seen that time and time again. We've looked at intelligence, we've looked at data, sometimes we look at things that are on social media to help guide our decisions. We want young people to be safe in our city. We want them to be able to enjoy the activities of our city, but we're not going to tolerate that kind of criminal activity that we've seen in the past. The juvenile curfew zone that was enacted, we've seen a decrease in our juvenile participation in those locations.
And Madam Mayor,
yes.
If I may, how effective would it be to federalize crimes that you commit? Because we keep hearing that from the U.S. Attorney for D.C., but how effective would that be as a crime prevention strategy, in your opinion?
Well, I have had a pretty, we had a meeting with the U.S. Attorney for Jeanine Pirro last week, and she does have a lot of interest in juvenile crimes and how her office can be more engaged. What I committed to her then was having some conversations around the laws that she's concerned about with members of the council and seeing if there's any possibility of an omnibus to change that.
All right, so we took it away a little bit. Come on in, folks. We take you back to out front of the National Guard Armory in D.C. The volume was going low on their feed, so it's hard to hear a little bit. Now, I've been watching in the course to kind of give you like a little bit of an assessment here, what they said, the D.C. police chief and the mayor, you know, their role, and it looks like it's going to be full cooperation. They have no choice. They have no choice. They have to follow the law. They have to follow the law. Now, what happens after 30 days? What happens after 30 days on this situation? And that's where we don't know. You know, how long is the National Guard or even the military? We don't know if the military is going to come into play too. You know, Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, said yesterday at the press conference that, you know, all options are on the table, though they haven't deployed the military intent. But it will be interesting to see, you know, what exactly happens this weekend in Washington, D.C. Over the weekend, we're monitoring the situation. As far as what the troops are doing right now, I've been looking at the different feeds and seeing, you know, if there's any, you know, things that are going on out here. Haven't seen much activity yet other than what we saw on the beginning of the feed with troops coming in. So we're going to actually stay with this story, but anything else breaks on the deployment, for instance, if they start actually taking the streets and things like that, we'll definitely come back. But it looks like it's all quiet for now. And we got our eyes on Washington, D.C. for sure. So we wanted to share what the mayor had to say, the thoughts, the reports that are coming out. Let us know what you think with this situation. in Washington, D.C. We got our eyes here. We'll see what happens in the next coming days. I think this weekend's going to be crucial to see where this heads. And any footage or anything else breaks, you'll hear it here on JLR Investigates. We're going to sign off for now, so I'm going to blow myself up here. National Guard, Washington, D.C. Let us know what you think. Be safe out there, folks. Be safe out there. Or do you support this or do you not support this? Let us know what you think in the comments. We'll talk soon. JLR and Magnolia Investigates. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.